My name is Sonia Weston, and I am the founder of Young People Travel Global Edge. And it has been an honor to take an amazing ride with some youth here in the Detroit area and also all over the United States and also outside of the United States, because we do have students in our program that are from Africa. So it has been wonderful to merge them together, to expose them to different cultures, and also stay within our pillars and our mission here at Young People Travel Global Edge. We have a mission to expose our students to the world, but we're going to focus, as always, on education, entrepreneurship, cultural immersion, sports, and the many careers out there in the world. So tonight, two of our students will host this wonderful conversation, amplifying women and girls in international diplomacy. You know, we have to have role models in that area in order for us to walk that international walk, and we have some awesome guests. So I'm going to move out of the way and allow our two students to lead in a way that we have educated them, and they have taken on this opportunity to ask questions, hold conversations, and also educate us on what is important to them. So tonight, I would like to introduce you to Kendall Dean, one of our students who goes in between Ohio and New Orleans, and also Taylor Weston from Novi, Michigan. Ladies, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Miss Sonia. As she said, I'm Kendall Dean, and I go in between New Orleans and Ohio. I'm 17 years old. I go to Copley High School, and I'm a junior. And I'm really excited to be here tonight to listen to everything you have to say and learn from you all. Tonight, my co-host is Taylor Weston.
Hi, everyone. My name is Taylor Weston. I am 15 years old, and I am a sophomore at Cass Technical High School in Detroit, Michigan. And I want to say thank you all for being here today. I'm going to turn over to Kendall.
Okay, so before we get started, one last time, I just want to say thank you all for participating and being here with us and helping empower young women during Women's History Month. So we're going to start off with introducing our special guest. And once I introduce your name, if you could give us a brief summary of you and anything you would want everyone to know, and then we'll move on to questions. So first, if Miss Lisa Morgan could go and unmute yourself.
I'm already unmuted. Thank you very much, Kendall. That's really cool. You go between Ohio and New Orleans. I like that. And Taylor, I live in Michigan too. I'm in Saugatuck, Michigan, which is a tiny little village on Lake Michigan. Well, I think I'm going to be revealing a lot of myself through the questions, but I can just say that I am a retired Foreign Service Officer for the U.S. State Department. I still do a lot of consulting work for the State Department and other areas in education, and specifically in teaching English to speakers of other languages. So I guess you could say my approach or where I come from is mostly through education and languages. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Ms. Morgan. Next, could we have Ms. Pugalia? I'm so sorry for mispronouncing that.
It's all right, sweetheart. I think 90% of the people get my name wrong at the first instance, but that's the fun of it because then you don't tend to forget it once you get it. So it's absolutely great to be here. My warmest gratitude to Sanya. Thank you, my dear. And what better way to start my India morning at 3:30 talking to the beautiful youth Taylor and Kendall. So thank you so very much. And my co-panelists, Lisa and Ambassador Shabazz. I have been working very closely with youth from about the last 20 years in terms of guiding them towards understanding what their goal is, especially entrepreneurship. And over the past years, have been very fortunate enough to be in conversation with women from the diplomatic avenue. So have been very understanding towards understanding how the pathway of diplomacy, especially in my country, how it is coming around. So yes, I'm very excited to be here in conversation and learn and take back so much from this webinar. So thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. And last but not least, Ambassador Shabazz, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Good evening, ladies, Lady Dean and Lady Weston, and to my co-panelists this evening. First of all, I just want to really congratulate YPT Global Edge. It's just been really an amazing experience getting to know Mrs. Weston and the journey that young people, even young people in my own life, who have been registrants over the last couple of weeks, and the impact of storytelling and journeying across the globe through this medium has been really impactful and significant. And why so for me is I grew up generationally as a global citizen. So notwithstanding the census box that I may be assigned here in the United States, I have 5 different cultures, all of which I hold dear and acknowledge them each with 100% value. So I'm 500% my global representation. And how I get to explain that over my last 40 some odd years on the professional side is that it gives impact for people to really have a sense of the breadth of their journey, where they come from, and not by slice, but by variety, by the volume of who you are. So I look forward to spending the next hour discussing and learning from the panelists, the young ladies, and ways in which I can also support and fill in those blanks.
Thank you so much for that. And last but not least, Miss Margaret Mutumba. Sorry for mispronouncing again.
It's perfectly fine. You said it quite well. Good evening, everyone. My name is Margaret Mutumba. I am calling in from Uganda, so it's about 1 a.m. over here. I am a public health researcher, and I am currently completing my doctoral studies at the University of Waterloo in Canada. And my research is focused around access and affordability of fertility care for folks who are seeking those services in the sub-Saharan continent. I look forward to hearing from my fellow panelists and enjoying an engaging discussion with our audience today.
Thank you so much for that. And thank you to all of you for giving us a brief introduction. I'm going to turn it over to Taylor so we can get into our discussion.
Hello, everyone. I did not get to meet you yet, Miss Margaret, so it's really nice to meet you. I'm going to help guide you through some of the questions for our facilitated discussion. For our first question, it is, how did you get started in international diplomacy? And first, I'm going to have Miss Lisa Morgan answer this question.
Well, I was thinking about that question today, and I have to go quite a ways back to tell you the truth. But I think what really launched me into this was my mother was a very curious woman. And so I think that combined with the books that I read, I was from a very small town in southwestern Michigan, not where I live now. And I read a lot of books. I read a lot of books about places that I had never seen or even heard of. I think that's what triggered my curiosity. I got that from my mother. But my first true experience internationally, it wasn't that I was a diplomat, but in some ways, I suppose I was. I became a governess, or what we used to call an au pair girl, in Finland when I was 21. And that, I would say, launched and continued my curiosity about foreign lands, people, cultures, languages. And from then on, I just kept going and going. Sometimes I went in a little bit different direction, but I always came back to it. And that, I would say, culminated in my becoming a Foreign Service Officer for the State Department. So that's long story short, but that would be my first real recollection of those curiosities, being able to be slightly satisfied. And I just had a hunger that gave me more of a hunger and a thirst for more.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan, for that wonderful answer. Next, we're going to go on to Ms. Pugalia, I think.
Thank you, Taylor. Well, I would like to start firstly with the word diplomacy, especially in my country, as you know, that the Purdah system and so many other societal, actions have been around centuries, which has not let women take the front seat. So yes, my take with diplomacy has been from a very young age, wherein I think it was just inborn, wherein I always was very intrigued by the role of women in decision making, and also just to have a voice to let's just start as a small unit as a home. And that curiosity, just like what Lisa said, gave me the pathway ahead to be very intrigued and to learn more about it, to observe more around me. And as and when I grew and had the opportunity to sort of interact with people who are coming from this particular area of work, just let me understand more about the functionality of diplomacy, or as you would like to call it, international diplomacy. So yes, maybe I have not been a diplomat or have been directly involved with the system, but have been very fortunate enough to be transparent with men and women in my country to understand this field a bit more better.
Okay, thank you for that great answer. We're going to move on to Ambassador Shabazz.
Well, I was trying to think of the journey, of the route to answer that question. And as I stated earlier, I'm born of it. I entered a world with parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents who were narrative holders. And they were all social advocates. They represented the journeys and the excellence of people within their respective communities, and they traveled and moved. And that's on both sides of my family. My mother and father's side generationally were engaged in making sure that there was equity, a word that we use now. But then diplomacy was really about courtesy. It was about consideration. It was long before it was a formalized role in my family line. It was the character and the nature in which those who were in leadership positions made sure that there were balances within their respective communities, villages, towns. And so fast forward, not only did I grow up in that environment, but I am a graduate of the United Nations International High School. Now they call it UNIS for short, but when I was a kid, you said the whole title, and this is in the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s, when I was in school. And that was right at the time when America was going through quite a bit during the civil rights movement, the free love movement, the Vietnam War. So we as children, while the adults were responding to the goings on and the treaties and everything, we as youngsters in that environment got to know people around the globe as people, as classmates. So we were very ecumenical in our faith respect and our cultural respect. When you look at a map, you see little dots, but at the UN school, those dots became real faces and people and yearnings and desires. And so whether you were 16 from Brooklyn or 16 from Brunei, we found this synergy, and it has stayed within me. My major when I went to college was international law, but it was not to have a law firm, it was so that I could translate culture. So some part of it was always in me by gene, by nature, by environment, by interest, my capacity to translate culture and language and nuances, even for my grandmother who spoke 5 languages, but I would have to translate social semantics so that she would understand the context. Like even now, when I listen to Gen Zers, I'm thinking, can run that by me again? Explain what that means now. And then fast forward, my role in as an ambassador appointed by the former, not from the United States side, but actually appointed by the former Prime Minister of Belize, as initially as his advisor for international cultural affairs and project development, and then appointed. And so 19 years rather, I'm sorry, I've been ambassador at large. So what it means though, then since I'm not managed by either Ministry of Foreign Affairs or the US State Department, it is still using the capacities that I've heard the ladies state earlier, in which you touch the lives of others, you bridge the gaps, you translate where the currencies are. So currency for me is not money or dollar, it is capacity. It is identifying the strengths, the untapped, the value. So I love my work because it is of my root, it is of my nature, and in my 60s as I am, I get to not retire, but rewire myself into this space where we're always evolving.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Shabazz. And finally, we have Miss Margaret.
Excellent discussion so far. So, I mean, I would just like to add in the same way, not that I'm professionally in international diplomacy, but if you just look at the word diplomacy, it's the ability to negotiate, right? It's the ability to talk with anyone from a different background or different life experience and come to some sort of commonalities or have an opportunity to learn. Fortunately for me, my parents as well were very adventurous. And so we traveled a lot when I was younger. My mom in particular has itchy feet, and I think she passed that on to me. And so we were encouraged to travel. I think from the age of about 7, I was able to travel on my own to visit family around the world. And so that experience, first of all, obviously gives you confidence, right? That you can travel on your own, you can make those journeys and go into new contexts and learn from other people. And for me, traveling gave me wings in a way that, when you're in one place, you feel that way. But when you travel and you see other ways of being, other ways of life, the world opens up to you. And I used to say that if the education was available in Uganda, I would have been an anthropologist. We don't have that program in Uganda, and quite frankly, African parents wouldn't be willing to pay for it. But I really love learning from other cultures. I especially love tasting different types of foods. And I think that's one of the things that prompted me into traveling. I love tasting different foods. I love music. Different cultures have different types of music, and I really can appreciate that about the world.
I just want to say thank you all for such wonderful and thorough answers. We're going to get transitioned to our next question, which is, how many countries have you visited and what are those countries? We can start off with Ms. Pugalia.
I'm absolutely the wrong person for that, Taylor, to ask me, because unlike Margaret, I have wings. I have the inclination, but I don't have the guts because I hate flying. Trust me, a 2-hour flight. Also, I'm like looking at my watch millionth of time as to, when am I going to reach? So, I wish we just had roads everywhere connecting continents. And then I just love road journeys. But yes, I've been very fortunate enough, I think, being part of many discussions, physically, where I've been exposed to meeting men and women, in different units, in conferences, which has allowed me to um, in different economic forums where I've been exposed to culture very differently when you interact with them, network with them. And I think from the past one year that we are in the situation due to the pandemic, I have sort of accelerated, this arena where I've reached out to all my soul sisters across the globe, whom I have connected over the years, and through them to more soul sisters around the globe, so that I just because I don't like traveling, it does not, take away the spice of learning and about their entrepreneurship or their culture. And so, yes, I might have not visited many countries rather other than the Far East, but yes, I am very transparent and very sort of known and graduated because of my desire within to seek network and sort of interact with this beautiful souls all across the globe. And when you talk about food and music, well, Margaret, talk about India, come to my country, see
Oh.
the music we have, see the food we have. Each state has its own food, own music. You would just love it. Like, India is going to fill you up. So yes, there you are, a total Indian speaking at 3 a.m. in the morning. So wow, great. But yes, as I said, physically, I've not traveled much, sweethearts, Taylor and Kendall. But yes, very fortunate enough to be in the zone where I can say that, yes, I am to a global citizen, because sitting at my chair, the digital medium has allowed me to connect with the soul sisters far away on the other way, on the other part of the earth. So yes, well, so that's about it, Taylor.
I would have to agree with you. I'm not the biggest fan of planes, but we kind of just tolerate it since you can't drive everywhere. The next person I would have Ambassador Shabazz.
Now, what's the question? How many countries?
Yes, how many countries have you visited and what are those countries?
So I would start with how many countries I've experienced in one place first, because not everyone really gets to journey or forward travel. But if you live in a space or a place that, I'm a New Yorker, so there is no food that was not present. There's no culture that was not present. And if you were going to have dinner at your friend's house whose grandmother was Italian, we were all Italian for dinner. So if there's a Russian Day parade, we're all Russian during the parade. If there's, and so on and so on. So in New York, I find that whomever your neighbor is, we kind of speak a melange of languages based on the composites of culture all day long. Now, in terms of travel, I've probably been to, 30 countries. I would say most of them in my younger days when I wasn't concerned about the fear of flying, and to the chagrin of my mother, who did not breathe or exhale until I landed back at JFK, because I was one of those that really did immerse. I became the culture. Now, I may not have looked like it, but you couldn't tell me that I wasn't from there if I was there. I become it. And so when you talk about food, music, rhythms, when I create or curate delegations, those are the kind of immersions that we engage. By the time we leave or return back, people feel as if they are part of those countries. So on most continents, I have not been in the Far East, but I've been on the other continents, and can probably say thank you in 42 languages as a result of my excitement of being engaged. I can't say the second sentence. It usually gets me in trouble because I can usually say thank you as if I were a native, and people dive right in and give me the rest. And I have to say, oh, no, just thank you. I can only say thank you. But it's because I want to be involved, and I'm so appreciative that just saying thanks from an American, flat American salutation is not enough. And I know when I was in Zimbabwe some years back, I would say Tatienda when I would leave in the hotel. So they started to call me Tatienda. And I thought to myself, do people not say thank you? That so much so that the bellhops or the service persons at you at the front desk, they would say, hey, good morning, Tatiana. So thank you goes really far, and it's an easy way to start your course in the world, because it's a simple phrase that expresses appreciation and it breaks bread.
Thank you, Ambassador Shabazz. I would like to say that I hope my list of 8 countries turns into 30 someday.
Well, eight is good at 15.
Yeah, next we will have Miss Margaret.
Sure. First of all, 8 at your age is incredible. So
Yeah.
definitely think we might go even past 30. I've 22 countries in East and Southern Africa. While I was doing my university, which is also a great travel. In the UK, my classmates, we traveled around Europe, and then so I've spent a lot of time in many of the Caribbean islands. Just because I'm a beach person, those are the kinds of vacations that I water. So I love to visit spaces where there's water. I am yet to visit India, but I've been convinced today. I have to say we have in Uganda, there's a lot of Indian influence. And so we have chapatis, we have masala dishes and samosas and, that sort of thing. I feel like I'll be right at home. Now that we've met here, also great to be part of young people, global travelers. You get to meet people around the world, right? So I'm taking that as an invitation.
Absolutely, Margaret, and to everyone, and to the youth program. I mean, come to India, and we are very warm, by the way, and we are very talkative. So
Exactly. So I look forward to that and to make that 23 on the list.
I would have to agree with you. India is now on my list of places I want to go to. I know my mom went without me, I think a year ago, and I was kind of mad about that, but it's definitely somewhere I want to travel to in the future. Next we'll have Miss Morgan.
Yeah, well, I have never counted how many countries I've been to until yesterday. And I Googled, list of the countries of the world. And actually, I've been to 70 countries. But I think there's a couple of other comments that have been brought up by my fellow guest speakers. And I think it's really true. It really depends on what you give as to how much you can say that you've been somewhere, because just being somewhere physically isn't really what it's about. And by the way, I've been to India and I adore India. And I would say that the length of time that I've been somewhere and how I've immersed myself in the culture and the people and the language and all of those other wonderful things like music and food and all. So the countries that, and I won't say all of them because there's no way I'd spend the rest of the time we have talking about all 70 of them. But the ones that I recall most fondly and that I feel most intimate about are the ones that I've lived with families. So I would say Finland, that was my first real experience. I was in the US Peace Corps in Albania for 2 years, lived with family. And I'll always have a piece of my heart, as often people say about the Peace Corps for Albania. The English Language Fellows Program, which is a US State Department program. Again, I was in Albania for 3 years, so I spent 5 years there. I did a Fulbright scholarship in Belarus. So I feel some affinity toward, it was a little bit shorter period of time and it was in the dead cold of winter. So I didn't get out as much as I would have liked to. But then in the Foreign Service, of course, I lived in countries in Chile, spent a lot of time in the Southern Cone of South America, working in many countries there, Egypt, and Iraq. I didn't get out to the places I would have liked to in Iraq because of the security situation at the time. But of course, I worked with a lot of Iraqi people, came to know them and love them, eat their food, try to understand their language, not very well, but so those are the countries, I guess, and Thailand. I lived for a short period of time. But I think, yeah, it has a lot to do with how much you, for me, it's all about the people. And when I traveled, and I used to travel just for pleasure, really enjoyed it, met wonderful people. But it always made more of a difference. I needed to find more meaning in my travel. And that's why my path kind of took this journey into education and work experiences. And then, finally, with the State Department, and there are many programs that I've been involved with besides as a Foreign Service officer. Also, one other program was the English Language Specialist Program, which are short stints, anywhere from 2 weeks up to 6 weeks. And I went to many countries through that program. And that also, because I was working in schools, working with teachers, got to know people better and understood the warmth that people share with you. That I definitely felt in India, because that's the program I went into for India. So yeah, it's been a really wonderful time, and I hope that I get to spend some more time on airplanes and going places in the future.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. I just want to say 70 countries is a lot.
I'm pretty old though.
And I want to say that I love how you're able to stay with host families while you were traveling. I feel that you get a lot out of a culture when you're able to stay there longer and be engrossed with like host families and like just being right there inside of the small towns. And now we can get started on our third question. And this is, why do you feel women do not have representation in international diplomacy? And who hasn't gone first? We have Miss Margaret go first.
Thanks. I don't know that I should go first, but I guess I can speak from an African perspective, right? Predominantly, obviously, because even in diplomacy, if you look at many African countries, most of the leadership is male. And obviously that's predominantly due to the history around the role of women, which is in most places, right? That's at home, caretaking, and basically managing household or home factors. And so that historical way of gender dividing of roles has meant that women were not often in spaces of decision making, or even the voice of a woman was not entirely accepted in terms of being at the table and contributing to valuable dialogue and negotiations. Partly due to patriarchy, but also, of course, partly due to religion. And so it's obviously changing, but also the practicalities of, for instance, being in that kind of role. So for instance, if you're coming from Africa, you have to consider visas, right? That's very much a significant barrier, and it requires financial, very big financial investment for people to be able to travel. If you have a family, that's can be quite difficult in terms of stability. And so those are some of the barriers that have inhibited women to be represented in these spaces. However, I see the tide is changing, and hopefully there'll be a change in culture and acceptability around that.
Thank you, Ms. Margaret, for that amazing answer. Next, we're going to have Ambassador Shabazz.
These are really provocative questions because I have to really give thought to them. And I think women have roles that even when presumably quiet, women still are the compass and a heartbeat and very defining, notwithstanding the usual professional or formal roles that patriarchy may indeed lead or present. I know that, and if we're always comparing by numbers, as opposed to just who are those 200 women and not juxtaposed to the 2,000 men, right? So if we start to identify, you have Madam Morgan here, who is in the world of diplomacy. So if she is one within this group, that in and of itself represents another 1,000, and we should have names. Or I think in our earlier conversation, we'll talk about Sojourner Truth and Harriet Tubman, and these are names that we mentioned, but we need to continue listing and giving volume. I know when we lost Nelson Mandela, no one mentioned Winnie Mandela's name. And she herself would be a leader in the role of social cultural diplomacy on behalf of the Western Hemisphere. Knew about apartheid because of a wife's struggle on behalf of her husband. She was not trying to be a diplomat. She was not trying to enter foreign service. She was not aiming to be in politics. She was an advocate on behalf of her, having a whole solid home on behalf of the man that she admired, loved, and had children with. So it depends on how we view that question. I think I have been around and raised and introduced to and have in a circle of many potent aunts, some whose names we know and study and others that we don't, and none of them are without the power to shift a room, whether it's the teacher, whether it's the grandmother. So it's not the profession, it's the spirit and the nature of women in order to translate, represent, cultivate, and shape lives. And so would I like there to be more? Yes, but I think we would aim for it if we knew that there are many women in foreign service. There are many women in the professions of diplomacy in all ranges. There are women who are heads of state. We don't even talk about that. We only talk about the deficit. So if we start to talk about the asset that women bring to the table in their very existence, we don't have to create it. We don't have to imagine it. It really does exist. When I would go to the World Economic Forum in Davos, Michigan, that's funny. Davos, Switzerland, there is a First Ladies or head of states dinner. And when you go and you realize, we here in the United States talk about, will we ever have a woman? Are we getting there yet? And you must say around the globe, there've been prime ministers and presidents who are indeed women in history. Do we know their names? Do we have a clue of who they are? Do we know that they had to balance the rotunda or the state house and their homes at the same time? The diplomatic corps in each region of the world and different parts of the United States, those ambassadors, those representatives. So from my perspective, if you compare them to the number of men who may have been assigned or inherited these positions, then you're finding an inequity. But if you talk about them as themselves, and then you start to recognize the bounty of women that are serving in these capacities, whether it's formally in foreign service or representatively just as social diplomats.
Thank you, Ambassador Shabazz, for that great response. Next, we're going to have Ms. Morgan.
I would say I thought about this question in the framework of my youth and the kind of opportunities that I didn't even know existed. Coming from a small town where I wouldn't have known anybody ever that would be a diplomat in the sense of international diplomat, as you were saying, about as far as, the State Department or as a foreign service. I wouldn't even fathom that. I didn't even know those jobs existed. So for me as a young girl, looking out on that world, I didn't even know they existed. And truth be told, it wasn't until I was much older that I even thought that I could even apply for anything like that. I didn't, it wasn't out there until I met other women who were in that position and became mentors to me out of just kindness and interest in my, I guess it would have been my professional career. They saw something in me that said, you can do this. It's not that I didn't believe them, but I just hadn't even considered it. So I would say that having a mentor that believes in you, whether it's a male or a female, to be truthful, and mine happened to be female, is one thing that I think can really help young women and even middle-aged women, because I did not go into the diplomatic corps until I was much older. It's kind of like the way I've lived my life, to tell you the truth. It's been, I've always kind of been behind, if you want to look at that way, or maybe I just had other things to do along the way. And I don't regret that at all, but it is interesting when people ask me, well, you must have been, were you doing that when you were that age? It's like, oh, no, that didn't happen until later. And looking back, I say that's exactly the way it was supposed to happen. So also in my field, it was kind of a given. As an American educator, there were a lot of women that were educators, so I felt that I could manage that, to tell you the truth. And in different countries, of course, as Margaret was saying, depending on, the kind of requirements of a woman in their personal life and their professional life, there can be, obstacles or challenges to that. And so along the way in my work, I've always, anywhere I've gone and worked with teachers who think that they just need to stay at a certain level. And they say, well, I'd like to be a university teacher. And I say, well, why not? I've certainly encouraged that and tried to do that kind of informal mentoring along the way, if I could.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan, for that brilliant answer. Now we're going to move on to Ms. Pugalia.
Yes, thank you, Taylor. Yes, I totally agree what Ambassador Shabazz had to say when it comes to the recognition and mention of these women. And even today, this question is often met, with very uncomfortable silence and very unsatisfactory answers. And I would like to sort of mention my country's status. When in the year 1947, when we were coming towards independence, we saw several women politicians taking part as Indian envoys on the world stage. And, people like Hansa Mehta and Mutumba, they were the people who were pioneers, and they actively took part in foreign discussions. And even it was so profound that even, at the UN American, the newspapers there, they mentioned that how India is so forward, in those years, allowing women to take the front seat when it comes to international politics, diplomacy. But then somewhere, being an Indian today and being at a place where when we are reading articles and we are witnessing the state of women in my country, there is not much mention about these women who started, the foundations of international diplomacy on the world stage. And there might be two reasons for it. Again, the gatekeepers being men, and where most of the mentions of people in this field would be about men, and also I can add that the ecosystem that we have in my country when it comes to women, whether it's not that they have to just break one glass ceiling. It's like they have to keep on breaking the glass ceiling one after the other. It's like they pass through one problem and the second problem is there for them. Or maybe that when the chances and opportunities are there for them in terms of getting the position, or getting the promotions, they're always sidelined. So yes, it's not very conducive. And so though yes, I will not say that times have not changed, but the progress is so slow. And I think there's so many counter factors which are responsible for this process to be slow. Like I can talk about money, media, backing, finance. All of this adds a lot of hindrance for a woman to be in that diplomatic position, especially I'm talking respective to my country. So yes, as I said, that the times have changed. Yes, there are women who are taking the front seat, entering into the, giving their more, I should say, the appearance on the table when it comes to negotiations. But yes, the progress is slow, impactful, but it's going to be some time before we can actually relate and say that yes, the equality actually there is visible. And I think we should start more, acknowledging the fact. And as I said, and I repeat it again as to what Ambassador just said, is that recognizing the women who have been in this field, or even as a counterparts to the men who are the front seaters, would really, help. Creating a very different outlook towards international diplomacy and the involvement of women taking the front seaters.
Thank you, Ms. Pugalia, and everyone else for such great answers to this question. Kendall, this has been an amazing conversation. What questions do you have?
I just first want to say everyone's had such beautiful answers so far, so keep it up. Our fourth question is, what is some advice you would give to girls who are interested in international diplomacy? So Ambassador Shabazz, if you would like to start us off.
Well, I think Ms. Morgan also stated it. She was in education. You have others that are in other fields, biology and the sciences. I think if your interest and your intrigue is about the breadth of being part of the world, you lead or enter where you find your own personal fancy. I know a lot of people who started their lives in the Peace Corps, and they just could not shift or shake it after that experience, or being blessed to have a Fulbright or to be an au pair. And I think that if you lead or enter in an area that is of interest, then you are sharing that which you love in these spaces that you're in. So it's about respecting the other country, understanding and learning the other country from their perspective, not from an American perspective when you're traveling, learning the history as well as the languages, plural, and when the appropriate terminologies are used for formal and informal. I think if you are, I would say people should go online, and you would know this, Ms. Morgan, about the Foreign Service officers test, even. And it's kind of like a pre-exam to kind of test your wits about the breadth of information that you know about your own country, much less the world in and around. And I think lead with passion when you're young in terms of the age of the young ladies that are a part of YPT journey. Understand yourself in comparison, but actually in union. You know, what are the things you have in common? As I shared that I was your age when I was immersed in the United Nations International School. And my classmates are still in my lives, our lives. Our faces look different. We may have different faith origins, a different composite of cultures, and yet we are still absolute kin, as if we are related to one another. We understand each other so socially forensically. You know, we know each other's marrow, and we hear and understand the evolutions of each respective country because it came through people, not headlines, not referrals, just being engaged. So I said, before you go at this age, get to know culture, yours and the places you want to go. And who was it that mentioned the language courses where you can go do a short course and teach English? So I know a lot of people that entered like that, because at least English is something that you're proficient in, but you have to understand even in the translation. For me, growing up with English second language in my family, it actually broadens your vocabulary. And right, you know, you start to use different components, and that you choose words that you know the other one will understand. So when Spanish was a language I spoke separate from English, but I didn't even know the word in English for culpable until I understood the word in Spanish for culpable, because it wasn't guilty-o, you know, or anything like that. So I knew the word culpable, and then in the United States, when I came back, this is as a teen, I said, oh, I know guilty, but I didn't understand. So we start to realize the bridge of cultures around the globe and how we're all in sync. So I don't want to talk too long, but I just think passion, interest, fascination, and doing your due diligence, and not just landing someplace with a blue passport, but immersing in the country or the culture that you're going to visit and become them. There's a oneness in our humanity. What is that? And how would you share that?
That very insightful answer. Ms. Morgan, if you wanted to continue on with the conversation.
Yes, I totally second what the ambassador said about all of that. I will add just a couple of practical, I think, pointers, especially for young people. If you don't have an opportunity to get on a plane and fly anywhere you want, or live in another country right now, because of my area of expertise, and because I know that there's a lot of need for it, if you have even an opportunity to volunteer to tutor an English language learner in your school, or maybe another school that's in your neighborhood or community, that is a wonderful way to connect with other languages, other cultures, other communities, and maybe give a helping hand to a young person who just needs that little leg up, you know, to get going in school. Maybe that person or the family has just arrived in the United States, and they would forever be thankful for that, and you would be ever thankful for having the opportunity to do that. A practical idea, and I don't know if it would be feasible or not, but would be to, if in your high school or middle school, there are English language classes or ESL classes, to ask the teacher if he or she wanted some assistance. It's a wonderful way. And because we're very fortunate in the United States to have, and many other countries do too, but because I used to also teach ESL in the United States at community colleges, you'll often see that there might not be just 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, but could be up to 10 or 12 different cultures or languages within one English as a second language class. And so it's a great way to expand your understanding and kind of prepare you for that next jump if you want to go and live or stay for any extended period of time abroad.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan, for that answer. I personally haven't even thought about in my own neighborhood, being able to do that. So that's very interesting. Ms. Pugalia, if you want to go next.
Well, yeah, to all the young, the youth, girls, I would just like to say that if you have the passion, the drive, the inclination, the choice, the availability to be in any way, be actively participating, even in the smallest way, to upskill. Your take on making a difference through in your own city, your country, or later on in international diplomacy, I think you should totally go for it, because I think when a woman stands for diplomacy, she battles against muscle, media, and money, which I think sets a very important example for other women to set their foot in and be proud of it, because I think women are by default born with more resilience, and they can sew the fabric of growth and empowerment and peace between sovereign states. Uh, in a much more fertile manner, and I think how much ever I am able to experience through my reach is that now to have women, young girls, youth, and international diplomacy is no more just about a feminist movement, because when there's so much a woman can bring to the table in terms of consensus building and more impactful freedom and democratization and self-autonomy when it comes to making that very wholesome difference, because she has struggled, and she's there after a lot of battles that she has to overcome. So she knows the value of it. She knows that to exercise the power that she is in now, or learning where she wants to be in years to come, is really going to pave way for the future generations. So I think whenever a girl intends to be in this position, and very rightly, just like what my co-panelists say, as simple as understanding culture, or teaching English, or in whatever format, I think it's an opportunity which each girl should not let bail out, and take active participation in the same.
Thank you so much for the answer. I really have a strong belief in women supporting women and how strong we can be together. So I really appreciate you bringing that into this whole discussion. Ms. Mutumba, if you want to wrap us up with this question.
Sure. I mean, I don't know what more I can add, because the co-panelists have given excellent examples. I guess from my own experience, being a part of the African Graduate Student Association, and I mean, even within races, there's still different cultures in there, right? I mean, in Africa, for instance, you have different languages, which could mean different foods and different cultural backgrounds and ways of being. And even whilst, let me assume you're in high school, oftentimes people tend to be more comfortable sticking with groups that they already know, right? So if you can prompt yourself to go out of your comfort zone and try and meet and speak to people that you wouldn't otherwise speak to on a day-to-day basis, itself is international diplomacy, right? Mm-hmm. You're putting yourself out there and you're saying, I want to get to know you. I want to get to know what you're about, even if it's something that I'm not completely familiar with. Obviously, having mentorship is really important. I'm glad that we talked about women empowering women. My role model is my mother, fierce, which is why I'm the way I am, and I'm able to talk to people without what they think of me, right? So if you're surrounding yourself with let's say like the ambassador, for instance, or you have role models like that, like Miss Morgan, they can give you the practical tips, but also the life skills that will make you a good person to fill up this space. But most importantly, as long as you're a good listener, I think there's a lot to learn. There's a lot you can benefit from other people. If you can communicate to them as well your experience, then it's a mutually beneficial encounter.
Thank you so much for your insight. I really enjoy how being uncomfortable can be one of your biggest strengths instead of a weakness, because that's something I believe in too. So thank you for putting that in there. We have one last question to ask you all, and it is, how do you feel our program will allow girls to take the first step and enter the world of international diplomacy? So Ms. Morgan, if you'd like to start us off.
Well, I found that to be a hard question, because it sounds like from the pillars that you have and the little I know about your programs, that you've got it all right there, just waiting for you. And I would have just done anything to have something like that available to me when I was your age. And I can't say enough for just grabbing any opportunity you have. And as Margaret said, being uncomfortable. In fact, that was one of my notes that I wrote down. Just get into those places that you're uncomfortable within the opportunities that you have within these programs. I don't really know what they would be specifically, because that's where the most growth, I think, happens. And with growth comes confidence. With confidence comes risk, taking, and it's like a cyclical thing. It just keeps feeding on, one another. So I will end right there, because I think there's probably some other comments that could be made about this, but just take any opportunity you can. That sounds rather trite and cliche, but do it. And whatever is your passion, as was mentioned before, and support one another. There's nothing more important than supporting one another. And that kind of came a little bit later to me in life. It's not that I didn't want to support people, but I didn't understand really what that meant. And now it means a lot to me, and I understand its importance.
Thank you so much for that answer. Ms. Pugalia, if you want to go next.
Yes, when I was put that question, I was trying to do some research on the kind of programs that YBT is involved in, and it was really, really intriguing. I think everything that we've discussed today, whether it is coming out of your comfort zone, utilizing the opportunities that you have, the inclination of learning, growing, interacting, networking with people, I think everything is covered in the different programs that is so well groomed by Sanya, because when you're traveling and you're going to different countries, and you experience, as very rightly said by my panelists, that you absorb it and you become one of it, where you understand the different kinds of culture and the living styles. Whenever you are going to a country or interacting with someone foreign to your native land, you tend to research a bit about that particular entity, which adds so much to even the psychological place from where those kind of people are coming from, who are pertaining to a particular country. So you're learning so much of skills when it comes to life skills and entrepreneurship and culture, which adds to, I think, the creativity skills of the youth in your program. So I think, as very rightly said by Lisa, even when I was younger, we did not have such programs. And it was good, because I would have not traveled anyway. I would have just preferred sitting and learning. Yes, but then, yes, I think it is great, and such opportunities, if students are able to get through your programs, they should totally grab it. And I'm sure it's going to pave ways for many dimensions of work and passions that youth can get their hands on, because your programs are very very sustainable, and very giving to each individual. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I agree with so much and pretty much everything you said. Ms. Mutumba, if you would like to.
Sure. First and foremost, how fortunate are we in this program to have team leads who are women, right? So we've been talking about mentors, and just look at Sonia and the rest of the team, a good representation of women. This is an organization that has been in travel for many years, right? So you're very fortunate to have programs has been tailored and curated for a long time to ensure that you have an all-rounded experience. Just having this webinar, the exposure that it's giving, our girls or our youth on this webinar to the different ways that you can travel, whether that's physically or whether that's through your interactions professionally or otherwise, right? And so I think the best part is that this program, everything in terms of safety, because for girls, at least in my mind, safety is always a big thing when you're traveling. You're traveling with a team that's going to ensure that you have an all-rounded experience, but you're going to be safe at the same time. And that would be the ideal, really, for me, if that was the case. I often had to travel by myself. I didn't mind doing that, but there's a lot of research that you have to do. So just think about the opportunity, and you get to travel with your friends, which is even more fun. So you get to experience that with the people that you're in the program with. So you are very fortunate, and hopefully you can appreciate that as well by going through the program.
You brought up some very excellent points, especially recently with the whole safety in women. Ambassador Shabazz, I know you're more directly correlated with us, so if you want to wrap up this question.
Well, most certainly. I couldn't wait to establish a relationship with the virtual learning courses that you're doing with the students at the Newark Public High School, because of the stagnancy and the challenge of the last year of people being more confined. And I knew that this program, once it was defined or designed for the 8 weeks of Saturdays, where young people who very often don't leave their zip code can travel with you every Saturday. And I know it's only 8 weeks, and I guarantee you on the 9th week, they're going to miss the journey. There's something that's very inspirational about this, and the fact that the leadership are young people. They're listening to those of you who've already traveled, and so that there's a mirror of opportunity that enables them to know that it's something aspirational that they can do. Boys and girls who are watching, I've watched them feel as if the world was a big place that they had a part in, a space in, and you all are the stewards of exempling that. And so great regards to the founding and the continuity and the years of dedication to make this available to young people. And I think even more now, whether they're able to get on a plane or they are able to meet you via online in this capacity, you have offered something that has been so immeasurable that I have now extended it to the whole systems, the whole superintendencies, to somehow or another engage with YPT so that they can have this opportunity in their respective lives and not be halted by economics, circumstances, restrictions that are in our lives, in the lives of many young people, and that there's no limitation and to them becoming global citizens, which is my area, and that they can do it through YPT. And I just want to take my hat off to Sonia Weston, her board, her mom. I know that this is generational for her, and that she gifts it and shares the time and enables young people to lead. And so excited. I'm very excited, and I'm probably going to be a forever supporter of YPT.
Thank you so much for your answer and for everything you do for us. I always see you every Saturday. It's very eye-opening to know that there's other people helping us out and like in our corner. So I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate all the rest of you for your answers and just being here tonight with us and taking your time to share your knowledge, because I really appreciate it. I know Taylor does, because us growing up and going to college soon, it's very prevalent in our lives for us to know how to fully function as adults and also do something for the world, not just work a 9 to 5 and sit at home. So I really appreciate everything you all do. And thank you so much for your answers. Taylor?
I also want to thank you all for all of your wonderful responses to these questions. I would say that this webinar was a great experience for me and empowered me to travel more and step out of my comfort zone. Because as you guys said, it can be an advantage in life. I hope that in the future, I'll be able to experience how it feels to travel to 30 or even 70 countries, like Ms. Morgan, and see what different cultures the world has to offer. So I will turn it over to Ms. Sonia to close us out.
Excellent, excellent job, ladies. First of all, thank you so much to our guests. I am just elated that you are here, and then the conversation with our youth is all about you being a mentor to them, and that's exactly what you accomplished tonight. And I can't say nothing to take away from that. I just want to give you many thanks for your support, your knowledge, your international dedication, because that's what it's all about. Our young ladies, they speak from the heart because we hear what they are looking for, and we wanted to make sure that they were able to communicate. They have mentors now all over the world, India, Uganda, and all the other countries that you visited. You're able to share that with them. So we want to thank you for participating with us tonight. This was our very first conversation that our youth are wanting to collaborate with mentors that have lived and walked the walk of the international experience. So I want to continue to have you to be a supporter to Young People Travel Global Edge. I know we had a couple of questions on our chat, so I just want to let everyone know our website is yptglobaledge.org. That's yptglobaledge.org. We're always looking for mentors. We're looking for students to participate in this wonderful program, and we always are looking for support in so many ways. So visit our website, follow our wonderful guests, and definitely keep an eye on how wonderful our students will be, because we could be looking at the next president, vice president, ambassador of a country somewhere in the world, because they started right here with Young People Travel Global Edge and you ladies as mentors. So thank you. Thank everyone on Facebook and also who are a part of the webinar right now. And we look forward to joining with you again. Thank you, everyone.